On a gray morning in Atlanta, a billionaire stood frozen on the edge of the city, clutching secrets that could decide the future of thousands of families. Crowds rushed past her, blind to the storm behind her eyes. But one teenager, 17 years old, broke and already running late for the chance of his life, stopped. His name was Jamal, and the choice he made that morning would ignite a fight bigger than anything he could imagine. This isn't just a story about wealth or power, it's about how one act of courage can turn the course of a city. Stay tuned, and if you believe in stories where kindness changes everything, hit subscribe now and be part of the journey. In a cramped two-bedroom walk-up on the city's west side, Jamal Carter woke to the buzz of his phone rattling across the floor. A message from his mom glowed against the cracked screen. Landlord called again. $450 due Friday, or we're out. Jamal exhaled, staring at the ceiling's hairline cracks spreading like maps to nowhere. 17 years old, yet already carrying the weight of a man twice his age. From the living room, soft snores rose from his sister Layla, curled on a worn couch. Above her head, taped to the peeling wall, was her acceptance letter to the community college nursing program, a paper that glowed in the dark like a fragile prayer. Dreams had a price tag. One his family couldn't afford. He sat up quietly, careful not to wake her, and reached for the thin jacket draped over a chair. Tomorrow morning, he had an interview, his one shot at landing a part-time internship at a renewable energy startup. If he nailed it, maybe the paycheck would cover rent, groceries, even let his mother cut back on night shifts at the hospital. Jamal swallowed hard, steeling himself. But destiny rarely cares about plans. The streets pulsed with the confusion of a city half blind. People waved flashlights, phone screens glowed like fireflies, buses rumbled late through the rain-slick avenues. Jamal kept his head down, weaving through the crowd, shoulders wet, sneakers soaked. That's when he saw her. An elderly woman sat slumped on the curb beside the bus stop. Her velvet coat clung to her body like dead weight, soaked and stained. High-end heels splashed in puddles. In her arms, she clutched a leather-bound notebook, so tightly it looked fused to her hands. Commuters swerved around her, annoyed, dismissive. Atlanta's endless rush swallowing her whole. Jamal slowed. Every part of him screamed to keep walking. It was 8:12. He had less than an hour to reach his interview. Missing it wasn't an option. But her eyes stopped him cold, wild, frightened, like someone drowning with no one willing to throw a rope. "Ma'am, you okay?" Jamal crouched, voice soft. She lifted her face. Mascara streaked her cheeks in crooked lines. I have somewhere important to be, but I can't remember where or how to get there." Her voice cracked. Her trembling hands pressed tighter against the notebook, knuckles white. Jamal thought of his mother, hunched over surgical trays at the hospital. Thought of Layla's glowing acceptance letter taped above the couch. Thought of the envelope on their kitchen counter, holding rent money that came up short no matter how many shifts he worked at the auto shop. But he also remembered his grandmother. Before dementia took her fully, those moments when she sat lost in her own kitchen, dignity slipping through her fingers like sand. He sighed. "Let's get you somewhere dry. Out here's not safe." The only cafe on the block still had power thanks to a backup generator. Inside, warm yellow light pooled across polished tables. Jamal guided the woman into a booth and spent nearly all the cash in his pocket on hot tea and a muffin. "Thank you," she whispered, voice gravelly. Jamal nodded. When she finally opened the leather notebook, he caught a glimpse inside. His chest tightened. These weren't grocery lists or casual scribbles. They were technical schematics, detailed budgets, full proposals for something called the Community Solar Project. Blueprints for solar panels, notes on battery storage, charts of projected costs and savings. It was the kind of paperwork he'd only ever seen on the news, attached to projects worth millions. Who was this woman? And why was she sitting in the rain with plans that could power half the city? Her gaze sharpened suddenly, clarity flickering through the fog. You have kind eyes. Just like Jonathan. If only he'd lived. Her voice trailed off, the moment gone, confusion returning like a curtain dropping. Outside, red and blue police lights washed across the windows. Security guards from the high-rise next door hovered on the sidewalk, pointing toward the cafe, debating whose problem she was. Jamal's gut tightened. "What's your name?" he asked gently. She pressed trembling fingers to her temple. "Amelia Crawford." "At least I think so." The name struck him like a jolt. Crawford. He'd read about the Crawford Clean Energy Foundation in a news article last week, a billion-dollar nonprofit set to fund neighborhood solar stations across Atlanta. The project was supposed to slash electricity bills for thousands of families drowning under rising costs. Jamal blinked, his pulse thudding. Sitting across from him wasn't just a lost old woman. It might be the key figure behind a project that could transform his neighborhood, his family's future, maybe the whole city. The clock on the cafe wall ticked toward 8:45. His interview was starting in 15 minutes on the other side of town. If he left now, maybe he could still make it. But Amelia sat there shivering, clinging to her notebook like it was her last tether to the world. Jamal heard his mother's voice in his head. "Son, doing the right thing matters more than doing the easy thing." His chest tightened. He knew what this choice could cost him. Still, he rose to his feet and extended his hand. "Okay, Mrs. Crawford, let's figure this out. You're not alone." She blinked up at him, and for the first time that night, relief softened her frightened face. That rainy evening, Jamal had no way of knowing. One small decision to stop, to care, to help would ignite a chain of events that would change his life, her legacy, and the fate of thousands of families. Stepping out of the cafe into drizzle that still clung to the city, Jamal wasn't just walking beside a stranger. He was stepping into destiny. The rain had thinned to a mist by the time Jamal and Amelia left the cafe. The street still hummed with the chaos of the blackout horns, flashlights, sirens echoing off glass towers. Jamal held Amelia's elbow. As they crossed the slick pavement, her heels slipping on the curb, she clutched the leather notebook against her chest as if it contained oxygen. "Where do you need to be?" Jamal asked again, voice steady even though his mind raced. Her eyes clouded, then sharpened for a flicker. "City Hall, there's a vote. Noon tomorrow. Without me, the project dies." Jamal stopped cold. City Hall was 10 blocks away. He glanced at his phone. 9:10 p.m. His interview was already lost. A hollow ache hit his stomach, but the urgency in her tone left no room for regret. "Okay," he said firmly. "Then that's where we're going." Atlanta City Hall rose from the street like a fortress of limestone and glass. Its floodlights blazed, powered by backup generators, making the building look even more imposing against the blackout swallowing the rest of downtown. A pair of security guards eyed Jamal and Amelia as they approached the wide marble steps. "Evening," one guard said, narrowing his gaze. "Building's closed." Amelia straightened, clutching her notebook tighter. I need to speak with the council. I'm Amelia Crawford." The guard snorted, skeptical. "Sure you are." His eyes swept Jamal's damp sneakers, the fraying collar of his jacket. "You her grandson or something?" "No," Jamal said, heat rising in his chest. "But she's telling the truth. She's the founder of the Crawford Clean Energy Foundation. And tomorrow's vote decides whether this city gets affordable solar power or more condos nobody can afford." The guards exchanged looks. One pulled out a phone, murmuring into it. Within minutes, a man in a sharp gray suit burst through the revolving door. His hair was mussed, his tie loose like he'd been pacing all night. "Mrs. Crawford," he exclaimed, rushing down the steps. Relief softened his features when he reached her side. Thank God you vanished. I'm David Kim, your chief of staff. We've been looking everywhere. Amelia's hand trembled as she passed him the notebook. David, I'm not myself tonight. My head it's slipping. But this has to pass. David glanced at Jamal, taking in the teenager's soaked clothes and steady posture. And you are? Jamal Carter, he said. She was in trouble. I couldn't just leave her. Something flickered in David's eyes, surprise, then gratitude. Then you may have saved more than you realize. Inside, City Hall buzzed. Like a hornet's nest. Council members' aides scurried down corridors clutching binders. Reporters whispered into cameras about the blackout's impact. In a dim committee chamber, Jamal sat at the edge of a polished oak table while David and Amelia argued in hushed tones. They'll crucify you if you stumble, David warned. Developers have been waiting for any excuse to gut this project. If you show weakness, they'll say you're unfit to lead. Amelia pressed trembling fingers to her temple. I can't hold the numbers in my head. I know the heart of it, but the details. They scatter. Jamal glanced at the notebook lying open between them. Pages filled with figures, charts, and technical jargon he'd been poring over since the cafe. Without thinking, he spoke up. The project will power over 3,000 homes, save each family an average of $1,200 a year in utility costs, and create 600 local jobs during construction, he said quietly. Financing comes from municipal bonds at 2.8% interest, plus federal clean energy grants. Both Amelia and David turned to stare. Jamal's ears burned, but he pushed forward. If you present it like that, human terms, not just numbers, you'll hold their attention. Amelia blinked, wonder softening her lined face. Jonathan used to say that. Speak to their hearts, then their heads will follow. David looked between them, then sighed. Fine, we'll try. But if she falters... He let the unfinished threat hang in the air. The next morning, the council chamber overflowed. Developers in tailored suits lined the back wall. Community. Activists filled the gallery, holding handmade signs. Solar saves families. Reporters jostled for space near the dais. Jamal sat in the second row, his heart hammering as Amelia stepped to the podium. The blackout had ended overnight, but tension buzzed like static. Madam Chair, members of the council, Amelia began. Her voice shook, brittle as glass. This project, she faltered, eyes darting to the notebook on the table. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. A developer smirked, whispering to his colleague. Jamal's stomach clenched. She was slipping. Then Amelia's gaze found his in the audience. Jamal gave the smallest nod, steady, encouraging. Her spine straightened. This project is about dignity, she said, voice firming. It's about mothers who should not choose between groceries and power bills. It's about children studying by lamplight because electricity is unreliable. We can change that. We must. The murmurs hushed. She continued, weaving Jamal's phrasing into her own. Thousands of homes powered, hundreds of jobs created, savings that could lift entire neighborhoods. By the time she finished, the chamber was silent, rapt. The council chair cleared his throat. We will vote. Hands raised one by one around the semicircle. A. I. The final tally lit up the board. Unanimous approval. The gallery erupted. Activists cheered, reporters scrambled, and for the first time in months, hope surged through the chamber like electricity restored. Amelia turned, tears glistening in her eyes. She mouthed a single word to Jamal. Thank you. Outside on the marble steps, Amelia leaned heavily on David's arm. Reporters swarmed, flashes popping, microphones thrust forward. Jamal slipped away to the edge of the plaza, unnoticed. His phone buzzed. 17 missed calls from his guidance counselor, 3 texts from his mother asking why he'd skipped the interview. He sank onto the steps, the weight of consequences pressing down. The internship was gone. College might be out of reach, but as he looked up at the city hall columns glowing in the morning sun, Jamal knew he'd make the same choice again. Some things mattered more than his own advancement. Amelia's driver pulled a sleek black sedan to the curb. Before stepping inside, she turned back, crossed the plaza, and pressed something into Jamal's palm, a silver key shaped like a sunburst. "My husband designed this symbol when we first dreamed of the foundation," she said softly. "I think you were meant to carry it." Jamal stared at the weight in his hand, the metal warm against his skin. He opened his mouth to protest, but she was already walking away, her posture regal once more. David lingered a moment longer. "She doesn't give those lightly," he said. "Whatever you did last night, it changed everything." Then he followed her into the car, leaving Jamal alone on the steps, one hand clenched around the key, the other shading his eyes against the morning light. By Sunday night, the glow of the city council victory had dimmed into something heavier. Jamal sat cross-legged on the floor of their apartment, textbooks spread open but unread. Layla worked at the kitchen table, flipping through her anatomy notes, her brow furrowed with exhaustion. Their mother's keys rattled at the door as she returned from another 12-hour shift. "Baby, what happened at your interview?" she asked before even setting down her purse. Jamal didn't answer right away. The truth was sharp. He hadn't gone. He had no neat excuse to offer, no way to explain why he chose a stranger in the rain over his own future. "I missed it," he said finally, staring at the cracked tile. His mother sighed, disappointment soft but heavy. "You're too smart to keep throwing away chances, Jamal. This world doesn't wait for us." He wanted to tell her about Amelia Crawford, about the city council chamber erupting in cheers, about the way the silver key now burned like an ember in his pocket. But the words caught in his throat. To her, it would sound like fantasy. And king. Maybe it was. The next afternoon, Jamal walked to Rodriguez Auto Repair. Miguel was already elbow-deep under the hood of an old Chevy, grease staining his forearms. "You look like hell," Miguel grunted. "Interview didn't go so hot?" "Didn't go at all," Jamal admitted. Miguel wiped his hands on a rag. "Kid, you've got talent. But talent means nothing if you can't show up when it counts." Jamal forced a nod, shame burning in his chest. He bent over the Chevy, losing himself in the comfort of pistons and belts. Machines never judged. Machines only asked for patience. Hours later, when the shop lights flickered off, Jamal sat alone at the workbench. He pulled the silver key from his pocket and turned it over in the light. Its edges were smooth, the sunburst etched so finely it shimmered. On the back, barely visible, were tiny letters. CIL, he frowned. Crawford Innovation Labs. 2 days later, Jamal stood outside a sleek glass building on the north side of the city. A sign above the revolving doors read, Crawford Innovation Labs. His stomach churned. What was he even doing here? The receptionist would laugh, call security, send him packing. But the key in his hand seemed to hum, urging him forward. Inside, the lobby gleamed marble floors, chrome railings, a chandelier that looked like frozen lightning. A receptionist with perfect posture looked up. "Can I help you?" Jamal swallowed hard. Amelia Crawford gave me this." He placed the key on the counter. Her eyes widened, just barely, before she picked up the phone. One moment, minutes later, a man in a tailored suit appeared. Salt and pepper hair, warm but cautious smile. "You must be Jamal," he said, extending a hand. "Dr. Michael Torres, head of research." Jamal hesitated, then shook his hand. Yeah. But how did you?" Mrs. Crawford called ahead. Dr. Torres said simply. "She asked me to show you something." They walked down a quiet hallway lined with framed patents and photographs. Engineers grinning beside prototypes, community ribbon cuttings, Amelia in hard hats at solar fields. At the end of the hall, Torres stopped before a heavy door with no handle. This was her grandson's office, he said softly. Jonathan Crawford. He died 3 years ago, but his work. Well, see for yourself. Torres slid the silver key into a slot. With a soft click, the door swung open. Jamal stepped inside and froze. The room was a shrine to possibility. Blueprints covered every wall, not flashy concept cars or luxury skyscrapers, but practical designs, solar microgrids, battery systems affordable enough for working families, modular components that could power entire neighborhoods. On the desk sat a photo of a young man about Jamal's age, dark-skinned, smiling confidently beside a prototype solar array. The nameplate read, Jonathan Crawford, lead engineer. Jamal's chest tightened. He pulled the key from his pocket and set it on the desk. Beside the photo lay an identical key, gleaming under the fluorescent lights. Jonathan believed technology should serve people, not profits, Torres said. Mrs. Crawford has been searching for someone who shared that belief. She thinks she's found him. Jamal shook his head, backing up a step. Me? No, I'm just some kid from the West Side. I missed my shot already. Torres studied him carefully. Or maybe this is your shot. Before Jamal could reply, the door opened. Amelia Crawford entered, her posture regal, her eyes sharp and steady. Gone was the confused woman huddled in the rain. This was the CEO of a billion-dollar foundation, radiating power. Hello, Jamal, she said warmly. I believe you found where you belong. He stared at her, words caught in his throat. Why me? Amelia's gaze softened. Because when everyone else walked past, you stopped. Because you saw a woman who was invisible to the world and chose to care. Jonathan would have done the same. She placed a leather folder on the desk and slid it toward him. Inside were documents. The Jonathan Crawford Fellowship. Full scholarship to MIT, living stipend. Summer internships at the lab. Guaranteed position upon graduation. Jamal's hands trembled as he flipped the pages. The numbers were staggering. This wasn't just a lifeline, it was a future. He looked up, eyes wide. I don't deserve this. Amelia stepped closer, her hand warm on his shoulder. Kindness is the only qualification that truly matters. The rest will teach you. That night, Jamal walked home through the city, the folder heavy under his arm, the silver key cold against his palm. The streets buzzed with neon again, the blackout long gone, but he barely noticed Dot at the corner where he'd first seen Amelia. Slumped on the curb, he stopped. The rain had scrubbed the pavement clean, leaving it ordinary again. People bustled past, hurrying toward their lives. No one paid him any mind. Jamal smiled to himself. He understood now. Sometimes the universe disguised opportunity as a lost stranger in the rain. 8 weeks later, Jamal Carter stood in the echoing halls of MIT's School of Engineering, trying not to feel like an imposter in borrowed clothes. His new button-down shirt still smelled faintly of the department store, the tags only cut off. That morning, the campus buzzed around him, students hauling laptops, talking in jargon that rolled off their tongues like a second language. He clutched the leather folder Amelia had given him, though he didn't need to anymore. The fellowship covered everything: tuition, housing, even a modest stipend that finally allowed his mother to quit one of her night shifts. Layla had burst into tears when she found out her own nursing tuition was now paid. Their apartment, though still small, no longer felt suffocating. For the first time in years, the math added up. And yet Jamal couldn't shake the gnawing fear. What if he wasn't smart enough to belong here? His first week was a blur of orientation lectures, lab tours, and endless acronyms. Professors rattled off equations faster than he could scribble them. Classmates compared robotics competitions they'd won, patents they'd filed, startups they'd already launched in high school. Jamal kept quiet, scribbling notes, praying no one would ask him where he came from. It was in the lab that the fear turned visceral. Crawford Innovation Labs had arranged for fellows to split their time between MIT coursework and hands-on projects. In Atlanta, the first assignment was deceptively simple. Redesign the cooling system for a prototype battery pack. Jamal stared at the schematic until the lines blurred. His lab partner, a tall kid from Palo Alto named Spencer, sighed dramatically. "You ever even seen a lithium-ion cell before?" Spencer asked, rolling his eyes. "This isn't changing spark plugs, dude." Heat crawled up Jamal's neck. He wanted to snap back, to tell Spencer about nights at Rodriguez Auto Repair, rebuilding transmissions with nothing but stubbornness and borrowed tools. Instead, he bit his tongue. The professor walked past, scanning their work. "Problem?" Spencer grinned. "Just catching my partner up. He's new to this." Jamal clenched his jaw. "Spark plugs, huh?" That night, unable to sleep, he spread the schematic across his dorm desk. The lines and numbers still felt foreign, but he forced himself to stare until connections formed. He thought about Miguel teaching him to fix busted AC units in the shop's sweltering summers. "Cooling isn't about fancy materials," Miguel always said. "It's about airflow. Pressure in, pressure out." Jamal grabbed a pencil and began sketching. What if the cooling ducts in the battery pack mirrored a C-vents angled for maximum flow? Cheaper to manufacture, easier to repair. He lost track of time, the sketchbook filling with diagrams. At dawn, he carried his work back to the lab. Spencer arrived late, smirking at Jamal's bloodshot eyes. "Burned yourself out already?" he mocked. But when the professor reviewed Jamal's design, his brows lifted. "Elegant," he murmured. "Cost-effective. It increases efficiency by nearly 20%. He glanced at Jamal. "Where'd you learn this?" Jamal swallowed. "Fixing air conditioners." The professor chuckled softly. "Innovation comes from unlikely places. Well done." Spencer's smirk faded. Jamal said nothing, but inside, something shifted. Maybe he did belong here after all. Back home in Atlanta, Crawford Labs hummed with energy as the solar project moved from blueprint to reality. Amelia had thrown herself back into work, her presence commanding in every meeting. Yet she always found time to check on Jamal. One evening, after reviewing his battery design, she invited him into her office. The walls were lined with photos of Jonathan, her late grandson, at various stages of his life. "You know why I gave you that key, Jamal?" she asked. He hesitated. "Because I helped you." "No." Her voice was firm, but kind. "Because you reminded me of him." Jonathan didn't design to impress investors. He designed to make life better for families who couldn't afford to be forgotten. That's the legacy I want you to carry. She leaned forward, her eyes searching his. But legacy isn't just about talent, it's about resilience. You will stumble, people will doubt you. The question is, will you keep building anyway? Jamal met her gaze. "Yes, ma'am." For the first time he believed it. The semester barreled forward. Jamal juggled problem sets, lab hours and late-night calls home. Layla sent photos from her nursing classes. Their mother smiled more than he remembered, and Miguel teased him over the phone. "Don't forget us little people when you're rich, college boy." But beneath the progress, storm clouds gathered. Developers who'd lost the council vote had filed lawsuits to block the solar project. News articles questioned whether Amelia, at her age, was fit to run the foundation. Anonymous op-eds called the initiative charity theater and claimed it would bankrupt the city. One morning, Jamal entered the lab to find Amelia reading a newspaper with her lips pressed thin. The headline screamed, "Crawford's Pet Project. Too risky for Atlanta?" She looked up at him, and for the first time since that rainy night, Jamal saw something flicker in her eyes. Doubt. That evening, Jamal walked alone through campus. The Charles River shimmered in the fading light, the wind sharp against his face. He thought about his mother's words, "This world doesn't wait for us," about Spencer's sneer in the lab, about the weight of Amelia's hope pressing against his shoulders. Pulled the silver key from his pocket, turning it in his palm. Its edges caught the last glow of the sunset, a reminder that he hadn't just been given an opportunity, he'd been given a responsibility. Somewhere in the city, powerful men were betting he and Amelia would fail. That the poor would stay. Poor, the lights would stay dim, and dreams like his would never take flight. Jamal closed his fist around the key. Let them bet. The first time Jamal saw his own name in the newspaper, it wasn't flattering. Teen mechanic becomes Crawford's poster child, the headline sneered. The article painted him as a charity case plucked from obscurity, a convenient story for Amelia to trot out while pushing her risky solar project. They called him inexperienced, unqualified, a distraction from the real issues. Jamal crumpled the paper in his hands, heat rushing to his face. I didn't ask for this, he muttered. Amelia, across the table, sipped her tea calmly. The louder they get, the closer we are to winning. That article makes me look like some pity project. Her eyes met his, steady and unyielding. Then prove them wrong. Use their stage to show who you really are. Jamal frowned. What stage? David stepped into the room, holding a tablet. Community forum. Tomorrow night. Developers are hosting it to rally opposition. Press will be there, council members too. They expect Amelia, but his eyes flicked to her frail hands, the slight tremor she couldn't quite hide. She won't be the one speaking. Amelia's gaze shifted to Jamal. You will. He lay awake that night in his dorm, staring at the ceiling. The thought of standing before cameras, facing hostile questions, made his stomach twist. He was an engineer, not a politician. His place was behind a workbench, not at a podium. They'll eat me alive, he thought. They'll see right through me. But then he remembered his mother's face, exhausted after double shifts. Layla, bent over her textbooks, determined to become a nurse. Miguel, laughing in the shop but carrying the weight of unpaid bills. All of them waiting for someone to change the math of their lives. If not him, then who? The community center was packed wall to wall the next evening. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead. Reporters lined the aisles, cameras ready. At the front sat the developers, slick suits, polished smiles, confidence oozing. Their spokesman, a man named Richard Hawley, adjusted his cufflinks as if he already owned the room. The moderator tapped the mic. We'll begin with brief remarks from both sides. Hawley rose first, his voice smooth as glass. Ladies and gentlemen, we all want what's best for Atlanta. But the Crawford solar plan is reckless. Unproven technology, enormous costs, and, let's be honest, handing our city's future to a teenager with no credentials. He gestured dismissively toward Jamal. Laughter rippled through the room. This is not leadership. This is charity theater. Applause erupted from the developers' supporters. Jamal's palms slicked with sweat. Then it was his turn. He stood. Slowly, knees shaky, heart pounding. The microphone felt foreign in his hand. For a moment, all he saw were faces skeptical, hostile, expectant. He forced a breath. Speak from the heart. Then their heads will follow. My name is Jamal Carter. He began. His voice cracked, but he steadied it. I'm 17 years old. I grew up in a neighborhood where the power goes out, so often we keep candles by the door. Where families choose between paying the light bill and buying groceries. Where dreams get cut short because survival costs too much. The room quieted. I'm not here because I'm a genius. I'm here because I know what it feels like to go without. And I know what it would mean for families like mine to save $1,200 a year on power bills. That's not charity, that's dignity. That's a future. He held up a sheet of paper, his own utility bill from the month before the fellowship, numbers circled in red ink. This is what reckless looks like, a system that bleeds families. Dry, what we're building isn't reckless, it's responsible. It's possible. And it's necessary. Silence hung heavy. Even the reporters paused, pens frozen mid-air. Hall smirked, ready to pounce. And you expect us to trust a child with billions of dollars in infrastructure? Jamal met his gaze. No, I expect you to trust the data, the engineers, the community that will benefit. I'm not the story here. The story is the single mom who won't have to work a third shift just to keep the lights on. The story is the kids who'll study by lamp instead of candle. If my face makes you listen, fine. But don't confuse me with the reason this matters. A murmur swept the audience, soft at first, then swelling. Applause broke out in the back rows, then spread like a wave. Activists rose to their feet, clapping, chanting. Reporters leaned forward, cameras flashing. For the first time, Hale's smile faltered. Afterward, outside under the parking lot lights, David clapped Jamal on the shoulder. You just turned the tide. Jamal shook his head, still buzzing with adrenaline. I just told the truth. That's exactly why it worked. Amelia stepped forward, her eyes glistening. Jonathan always believed the right words could move people as much as the right design. Tonight, you proved him right. Jamal swallowed hard, the weight of her praise pressing against his ribs. I was terrified, she smiled. Good. Fear means you care enough to get it right. That night, back in his dorm, Jamal collapsed onto his bed. Exhaustion tugged at him, but so did something else, something fierce and electric. For the first time, he realized he wasn't just part of the project, he was its voice. And voices had power. 2 weeks after the forum, construction began on the first solar site, an abandoned lot on Atlanta's west side, not far from Jamal's childhood block. The lot had once been a junkyard, and it still smelled faintly of rust and oil. But in Jamal's eyes, the land shimmered with promise. Rows of solar panels would rise here, feeding power into thousands of homes that had known only flickering. Bulbs and unpaid bills. He stood beside Miguel, who had brought half his crew from the auto shop to volunteer during off hours. Layla came too, still in her nursing scrubs, her eyes wide as she imagined the panels towering over the cracked pavement. It's real, she whispered. You actually did it. Jamal smiled, though unease gnawed at him. Every step forward seemed to invite resistance. The first sign came 3 days later. A delivery truck carrying critical battery components never arrived. The supplier swore they had shipped them, but the paperwork vanished into thin air. The city permitting office misplaced an entire file of approvals, forcing the crew to halt for inspection that should have taken weeks, not hours. At night, Jamal scrolled through news articles filled with half-truths. Solar site faces delays. Crawford project mismanaged. Headlines echoed with a single narrative that the plan was too ambitious, too naive. He slammed his laptop shut. They're trying to choke us in red tape, he muttered. David, on speakerphone, sighed. Developers have money, lawyers, and patience. Their goal is simple: delay until the city loses faith. If costs rise, council pulls funding, and it all collapses. Jamal's chest tightened. So what do we do? Prove them wrong. Every setback is a chance to show resilience. Resilience was tested again the following week. One morning, Jamal arrived at the site to find shattered glass glinting across the lot. Vandals had broken through the fence, smashing panels still in crates. Spray paint scrawled across the wall. Nitrogen monoxide freebies, keep out. Workers muttered angrily, some threatening to quit. The developers denied involvement, of course, but everyone knew. Miguel cursed under his breath. They're playing dirty now. Jamal's stomach twisted, but he forced his voice steady. Then we'll play stronger, double the security. I'll talk to the council about emergency funding. This project isn't dying on my watch. He bent down, picking up a shard of glass. His reflection stared back, fractured and sharp. They think they can scare us off, he thought. But they don't know me. That evening, Amelia called him into her office. She looked tired, the lines around her eyes deeper. But her voice carried steel. "You've handled yourself well," she said. "But this is more than broken glass and late trucks. They'll attack your credibility next. They already have." "No," she leaned forward. "So far, they've mocked you. Next, they'll try to ruin you. Background checks, financial digging, even lies if they must. They'll make the public question whether you belong here at all." Jamal's throat tightened. He thought of his mom, of the overdue bills, of the years he'd swept floors and worked under the table at the auto shop. Nothing illegal, but enough to twist into ugly headlines. "I didn't ask for any of this," he said quietly. Amelia reached across the desk, her hand covering his. Neither did Jonathan. But he chose to carry it because the work mattered. "You must choose the same." Jamal met her gaze. Fear still churned inside him, but beneath it burned something hotter. Determination. The choice came sooner than he expected. At dawn one morning, a fire broke out at the site. Flames licked up from a storage shed, thick smoke curling into the sky. By the time fire trucks arrived, 2 weeks of wiring and tools had been reduced to blackened ruin. Reporters swarmed before the ashes cooled. Cameras flashed as Hale, the developer spokesman, arrived in a pressed suit, shaking his head theatrically. "Tragic," he told the microphones, "but predictable. This project is unstable. Dangerous. Atlanta deserves better." Jamal's fists clenched. He wanted to shout, to accuse, to tell the world exactly who was behind the sabotage. But Amelia's voice echoed in his mind. Resilience. So when the cameras swung toward him, Jamal forced himself to stand tall. "This fire won't stop us," he said, voice firm. "If anything, it proves why we need this project more than ever. Families in this city have lived with the fire of high bills and unreliable power for too long. We're not turning back now." Reporters scribbled, lenses clicked. Jamal caught Hale's smirk falter just slightly. That night, back in his dorm, Jamal collapsed onto his bed, exhaustion pressing down like lead. His phone buzzed. Text from his mom, Layla, Miguel. Words of encouragement, pride, belief. Then another buzz, an unknown number. He opened it to find a photo. Himself, hunched at the auto shop months earlier, grease on his coveralls, face tired. The caption read, "Poster. Boy for progress, or just another broke kid out of his depth?" His stomach lurched. Whoever sent it wanted him rattled. He stared at the screen, then at the silver key lying on his desk. Fear pressed in, but determination pressed harder. "They can smear me all they want," he whispered, "but I won't let them steal the future." The next morning, he rose before dawn, sketches already forming in his mind. New panel designs, cheaper wiring methods, a faster rebuild. They could burn a shed, but they couldn't burn his resolve, because this wasn't just about him anymore. It was about a city waiting for light. The Fulton County courthouse loomed like a stern parent, its granite columns cold against a gray Atlanta sky. Protesters clustered at the steps, half with signs reading, "Let the sun in," half chanting, "Stop the boondoggle." Reporters lined both sides of the entrance, cameras flashing as Amelia Crawford climbed the stairs, Jamal at her side. "Mrs. Crawford." Voices shouted, "Is the project already bankrupt? Did you put a teenager in charge of billion-dollar plans?" Jamal kept his eyes forward, hand brushing the silver key in his pocket. He could feel the heat of judgment pressing in from all sides. But Amelia's presence was steady as a metronome. Inside, the courtroom smelled faintly of old paper and floor polish. The developer's legal team sat like an army in tailored suits, led by Richard Hale's attorney, a sharp-eyed woman named Victoria Lang. She smiled like a predator. The judge entered, robe sweeping. "Court is now in session." Lang rose first. "Your Honor, the Crawford Foundation's solar initiative is a reckless gamble with public funds. It relies on unproven technology, inexperienced leadership, and has already suffered sabotage and fire. We submit that it places Atlanta an acceptable financial risk." She turned, her eyes sweeping deliberately toward Jamal. "And central to this farce project is a high school student with no degree, no credentials, no business overseeing infrastructure worth hundreds of millions." Snickers rippled through the gallery. Jamal's ears burned. Amelia stood next. Her voice, though soft, cut through the room. "This project is not a gamble. It is a necessity. Our city cannot thrive when working families are forced to choose between food and electricity. The sabotage we've suffered does not prove weakness. It proves how powerful this project is, that those profiting from the old ways fear its success." Lang smirked. "Pretty words, Mrs. Crawford, but families cannot pay bills with pretty words." The judge nodded. "We will hear from witnesses." Jamal hadn't expected to be called, but Lang's grin made his stomach drop. "Mr. Carter," she said sweetly, "would you take the stand?" His knees felt like water as he walked to the witness box. The bailiff swore him in. Lang circled like a shark. 17 years old, correct? Yes. No college degree? No engineering license? No financial training? No. And yet somehow you are a central figure in this project? Advising on design, speaking publicly as though you were an authority? Jamal began, but Lang cut him off with a wave. "Answer the question, Mr. Carter. Yes or no?" "Yes," he said quietly. Slightly, Lang's eyes narrowed. "And you think anecdotes replace expertise?" "No," Jamal said. "Steady now. I think lived experience guides innovation. Technology isn't worth anything if it doesn't serve the people who need it most." A murmur of approval rolled through the gallery. Lang pressed her lips tight, moving on. During recess, Jamal slumped onto a bench in the hallway. His hands shook. "You held your ground," Amelia said, settling beside him. "Jonathan would be proud," Jamal exhaled. "She made me feel like I didn't belong." Amelia's eyes softened. "That's their weapon, making you doubt yourself. But belonging isn't granted by degrees or titles. It's earned by refusing to walk away." David hurried over, tablet in hand. "Media's already running clips of your testimony. It's going viral. People are calling you the kid who faced the suits." Jamal groaned. "Great, that'll help," but Amelia smiled faintly. "Sometimes the truth spreads faster than lies." When court reconvened, the defense called their expert witness, a former utility executive who painted grim pictures of grid failures and ballooning costs. His polished graph showed red arrows plunging downward, but then Amelia's team called their own witness, Dr. Torres. He explained with calm authority how the designs were sound, how the battery cooling system had recently been improved by nearly 20%. Jamal's heart leapt. That was his redesign. Torres didn't mention his name, but Jamal caught his wink. Finally, Amelia took the stand herself. She spoke not of profits or projections, but of families, single mothers, retired veterans, children who deserved better. Her words were simple, but they carried weight. By the time she stepped down, even the stenographer blinked back tears. The judge recessed to review briefs, announcing he would issue a ruling within the week. Outside, the courthouse steps exploded with microphones. Reporters swarmed Amelia, but Jamal found himself surrounded too. "Are you really running the project?" One shouted, "What qualifies you to make engineering decisions?" Another barked, "Are you just a mascot?" Jamal tightened his grip on the silver key. He raised his voice above the clamor. "I'm not a mascot. I'm someone who refuses to ignore what's broken. Families in this city are tired of waiting for change. This project isn't about me or Mrs. Crawford or developers in fancy suits. It's about Atlanta, and Atlanta deserves light." The crowd roared cheers mixing with questions, camera flashes strobing. For the first time, Jamal didn't shrink from it. That night, he sat at his dorm desk, exhaustion heavy but adrenaline still buzzing. He sketched furiously ideas for modular solar panels that could be repaired by anyone, not just trained technicians. Layla's voice played in his head, laughing about patients who always just needed someone to see them. Maybe energy systems weren't that different. His phone buzzed. A text from Amelia. "Proud of you today. Rest. The real fight begins now." Jamal set down his pencil and picked up the silver key, its edges cool and sharp. He turned it over, imagining the door it had already opened, and the doors still waiting. He knew the developers wouldn't stop. But neither would he, because light, once kindled, was hard to extinguish. The courthouse was packed the morning the ruling came down. The gallery overflowed with reporters, activists, developers in pressed suits. Jamal sat between Amelia and David, his heart thudding so hard he thought the whole room must hear it. The judge adjusted his glasses, shuffling the stack of papers before him. The silence was suffocating. This court has reviewed the filings, heard testimony, and weighed the evidence. He began. His voice was low but carried like thunder. While there are legitimate concerns regarding oversight and risk, the court finds insufficient grounds to halt construction of the Crawford Community Solar Project. Jamal's breath caught. Furthermore, the judge continued, the project demonstrates significant public benefit. The injunction request is denied. Construction may proceed. For a heartbeat, silence. Then the room erupted, cheers from activists, groans from developers, the rapid-fire staccato of camera shutters. Amelia's hand found Jamal's, squeezing. Tight. "It lives," she whispered, her eyes shining. "It lives." Outside, the courthouse steps became a celebration. Drums, chants, signs waving like banners in the sun. Reporters swarmed again, but this time the questions weren't barbs. "Mr. Carter, what's next for the project? How soon will panels go up? What do you say to families still waiting for affordable power?" Jamal blinked into the sunlight, the sea of faces waiting. And for the first time, he realized they weren't looking at Amelia anymore. They were looking at him. "I say we start building," he answered. His voice didn't shake. "And we don't stop until every family in this city has the light they deserve." Cheers erupted. Amelia nodded, pride softening her regal composure. Leadership, he quickly learned, wasn't about speeches. It was about mornings that started before dawn, ended long after the last worker went home. Jamal traded his dorm desk for a hard hat. Standing shoulder to shoulder with crews pouring concrete foundations, hauling steel frames, bolting panels in the blistering Georgia sun. Miguel's shop crew became unofficial foreman. Layla volunteered at the on-site clinic that offered free checkups for workers. Even Jamal's mom showed up on weekends, passing out sandwiches and water bottles. But with progress came new pressure. "Jamal, we're short on wiring again," one foreman barked. "Jamal, council wants updated numbers by Friday." "Jamal, the press is asking about delays." He was just one person, but suddenly everyone expected him to be everywhere. Nights blurred into spreadsheets, phone calls, and half-scribbled sketches for cheaper panel brackets. One evening, slumped at his desk, exhaustion tugging at his eyelids, David walked in. "You're burning out," David said flatly. "I can handle it," Jamal muttered. David shook his head. "Leadership isn't about carrying everything yourself. It's about trusting others to carry it with you." Jamal looked up, guilt heavy in his chest. "But what if they screw it up?" David smiled wryly. "Then you help them learn. That's how leaders grow and how legacies last." The first real test came sooner than expected. A shipment of panels was delayed at the port, threatening to stall construction for weeks. Tempers flared at the sight. Workers muttered about walking away. Jamal climbed onto a stack of crates, the whole crew watching him. His hands trembled, but his voice carried. "Yeah, this is a setback," he admitted. "But setbacks don't end projects. People quitting does. We can't control the port, but we can control what we do while we wait. We reinforce what's already built. We train volunteers. We prep wiring so when those panels arrive, they go up twice as fast. He swept his gaze across the crowd. This project isn't just Crawford's, it's ours. And if we stick together, no delay, no developer, no sabotage can kill it. A murmur of agreement rippled through the crew, growing into applause. Men and women nodded, shoulders squared, energy returning. Miguel hollered, "All right, you heard." The kid, back to work. For the first time, Jamal felt the shift. He wasn't just speaking hope. He was steering it. Weeks later, under a blazing autumn sky, the first row of panels gleamed to life. Jamal stood beside Amelia as technicians flipped the switch. Lights flickered on in a nearby apartment building, families cheering from open windows, children clapping like fireworks had gone off. Tears stung Jamal's eyes. For all the lawsuits, the sabotage, the sleepless nights, it was real. The city was brighter. Amelia leaned on her cane, her voice low but fierce. This is only the beginning. But it had to begin with someone willing to carry the light. Jamal swallowed hard, staring at the rows of panels catching the sun. He felt the silver key heavy in his pocket. "I'll carry it," he whispered. "For as long as it takes." Word spread fast once the first solar panels lit up the west side. Families bragged about power bills cut in half. Kids posted videos of lamps glowing in apartments that had been dark too often. For a moment, hope felt unstoppable. That's when the pushback hit. Flyers appeared on doors. "Solar scam will raise your taxes." Anonymous robocalls warned residents their homes would lose value. One night, a rock shattered the window of a corner store that had hosted community meetings about the project. Jamal walked those streets every evening, silver key in his pocket, hearing the whispers. Developers say this whole thing's just a stunt. What if the power cuts out? Doubt spread like mold. At a town hall, the tension snapped. Hale himself showed up, flanked by suits. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said smoothly, "ask yourselves, do you trust a teenager to gamble with your future?" All eyes turned to Jamal. For a moment, fear clawed at him. Then he stepped forward. "I'm not asking you to trust me," he said, voice steady. "Trust the light that's already shining. Trust the bills you've seen drop. Trust your kids who can do homework under real lamps instead of candles. That's not a gamble, that's proof." Silence hung. Then an elderly man raised his electric bill, shouting, "He's right, mine's down $50. The room erupted cheers, drowning Hale's polished words. That night, Jamal stood on the roof of the apartment building where the first panels gleamed. Below, kids played basketball under lights powered by the project. Mothers leaned out of windows, watching their children safe in brightness instead of shadows. Amelia joined him, cane tapping softly. "You've become more than an engineer," she said. "You're a shield. And shields draw fire." Jamal tightened his fist around the key, then let them come. "I'm not moving." The city stretched before him, glowing a little brighter than it had weeks ago. But he knew the fight wasn't over. It was only getting bigger. Winter crept into Atlanta, sharp winds rattling through scaffolds at the solar site. Progress was steady, but money was burning fast. Then came the news. City Council planned an emergency session to reconsider funding. "They've got lobbyists whispering in their ears," David warned. "If the council pulls support, the project collapses overnight." Jamal felt the weight like a stone in his chest. For weeks he'd fought vandals, rumors, lawsuits. Now the real battlefield was marble floors and microphones. The chamber was packed when he arrived. Council members in pressed suits sat in a semicircle, stacks of papers before them. Developers' lawyers leaned against the walls, arms folded with smug certainty. Reporters' pens hovered, ready to capture the fall. Amelia sat beside him, her cane across her lap. "You'll speak," she said simply. Jamal's pulse hammered. "I'm just a kid." She squeezed his hand. "So was Jonathan once. Don't speak like a politician. Speak like yourself." When his name was called, Jamal rose and walked to the podium. His reflection shimmered in the polished wood. He gripped the edges, took a breath, and looked each council member in the eye. "I grew up 3 blocks from the first solar site," he began. "When the power went out, my mom lit candles and told a story so we wouldn't feel scared. But fear doesn't pay bills. Fear doesn't keep the fridge cold. Light does. This project already works. Families have proof in their hands, their bills." He held one up, circled in red ink. Gasps rippled. "You want numbers? Here's one. $1,200. That's what families save each year. Here's another. 600 jobs. That's what we've created already. But the real number is one. One choice. Do we build a future where light belongs to everyone, or one where it belongs only to those who can afford it?" Silence swallowed the chamber. Then, slowly, one council member nodded. Another followed. The vote came down minutes later. Funding continued. 8-3 in favor. Outside, reporters swarmed. Flashes strobed. Jamal stood taller than he ever had. "What does this mean for the project?" One asked. "It means the light stays on," Jamal said simply. "And we're just getting started." Beside him, Amelia's proud smile said everything words couldn't dot by spring. Jamal's face was everywhere: local news, national magazines, even a viral clip on social media. Titled, "The Teen Who Brought Light." Strangers stopped him on the street, asking for photos. His inbox overflowed with speaking invitations. At first, it felt surreal. Then it felt heavy. He missed dinners with his mom, skipped calls from Layla, fell asleep over textbooks. His professors warned him, "Your grades are slipping." David warned him, "You can't lead if you burn out." But the project never slowed. Each week brought new deadlines, new demands. Everyone wanted a piece of Jamal, the media, the council, the community. And every time he tried to say no, guilt gnawed at him. One night, after a 12-hour day at the site, he collapsed onto his dorm bed. His phone buzzed. A message from Layla. "Wish you'd been there today. Mom got her nursing certification. She wanted you in the photo." Jamal stared at the screen until his vision blurred. He had fought so hard to give his family light, but somewhere along the way, he'd left them in the shadows. A week later, Amelia invited him to her office. She watched him sink into the chair, shoulders slumped, dark circles under his eyes. "Jonathan once made the same mistake," she said softly. "He thought success meant carrying everything. He forgot that life isn't just about what you build, but who you build it with." Jamal swallowed hard. "What if I can't balance it all?" She reached across the desk, resting her hand on his. "Then you choose what matters most. Leadership isn't about saying yes, it's about knowing when to say no." The next day, Jamal made his first real choice. He turned down a national TV interview and showed up at Layla's clinic instead, carrying flowers for her first day in scrubs. His mom's smile when she saw him felt brighter than any solar panel. And for the first time in months, Jamal remembered, success wasn't the light itself. Success was who you shared it with. Atlanta was still wet from last night's rain when Jamal Carter first stopped to help the frightened woman on the curb. He never forgot the way Amelia Crawford's eyes had looked, lost, clouded, desperate. That small choice, to kneel beside her instead of hurrying past, became the spark that changed everything. What began as one act of kindness grew into a fight. In courtrooms where polished lawyers tried to bury them. On construction sites where saboteurs left smashed panels and smoke. In town halls where doubt echoed louder than hope. Each battle tested Jamal's resolve. Each trial carved something stronger into him. But for every stone thrown, there was a hand lifted. His mother, finally able to breathe without triple shifts. Layla, thriving in nursing school. Miguel, transforming his garage into a training ground for the next generation. And Amelia no longer just the woman on the curb, but a mentor who handed him not only a silver key, but a legacy to protect. The day the first row of solar panels lit up, cheers rolled across the west side. Children pointed at lamps glowing. For the first time in weeks, families held up electric bills, their eyes wide with disbelief. For once, the math worked in their favor, but success carried its own price. Jamal became the teen who brought light. His face splashed across headlines, invitations pulling him in 100 directions. He missed family dinners, skipped calls, chased deadlines until exhaustion hollowed him. It was Amelia who steadied him. Jonathan once made the same mistake. She told him. He thought success meant carrying everything. But life isn't just about what you build, it's who you build it with. So Jamal chose balance. He showed up at Layla's clinic with flowers, celebrated his mother's certification, laughed again with Miguel under the glow of garage lights. The project thrived not because of him alone, but because a community believed with him. Years later, the solar field stretched beyond Atlanta, mirrored in cities across the South. Crawford Innovation Labs became a hub not of charity, but of possibility, led by young engineers who once thought college was out of reach. They called themselves Jonathan's Legacy, carrying forward a vision born in sketches and sacrifice. And Jamal? He no longer felt like the boy with grease on his hands and doubt in his chest. He was an engineer, a leader, a bridge between dreams and light. Yet he never forgot the corner where it all began. One rainy afternoon, walking home from a council meeting, he noticed a teenager sitting on the curb. A girl, clutching a torn folder of college applications, tears streaking her face. The crowd flowed past her, indifferent. Jamal paused, heart tugging with memory. He crouched down, his voice gentle. "Hey, you okay?" She looked up, startled. "I missed my interview. Bus broke down. It's over." He smiled, pulling a card from his pocket, his own now, embossed with the Crawford Foundation logo. "Nothing's over," he said. "Sometimes the universe just needs the right person in the right place. Today, that person is me. Tomorrow, it'll be you." As he helped her to her feet, rain glinting off the solar panels rising in the distance, Jamal understood. The circle never broke. Light, once given, spread endlessly, from a single spark on a rainy curb, to a movement that brought light to families everywhere. Jamal's story reminds us that kindness is the engineering principle that builds better futures. The circle never breaks. One act of compassion creates another and another until whole communities shine. What will you do when your moment arrives? If this story moved you, subscribe now, and let's keep building a brighter world together.